I built up Sparkle, and it was terrible. Here's why. This is my Sparkle, or Hanabi, whichever name you want to refer to her as, it doesn't really matter. She's at E0, she has her signature light cone, and for traces, I've maxed out her skill. I only go extremely high for characters I think are cute, and that I enjoy, like HoYoverse here, or even characters like Lynx, who I legitimately like. She's one of my favorite characters thus far. But in terms of DPSs, I do the exact same. Seely here is maxed out because she's a DPS I enjoy playing. The same thing occurred with my Yanqing. None of that's the point. The experience of building up and farming for a character in HSR is god-awful. Far worse than Genshin Impact. First off, Relic farming experience. If you watch my shorts, you already understand what my perspective on this is. It sucks. It doesn't matter whether you're farming for a DPS, whether you're farming for a healer, or a supportive character in any capacity, it's awful. Because, first off, unlike Genshin Impact, and I'm going to be comparing it directly because people like comparing the two games, the sets are kind of bad. Now, not necessarily the effect, but the act of farming for a set, because there are mainly, at least, a few stats you have to look out for, that being attack, crit rate, and crit damage. In certain instances, attack will be replaced with defense or HP depending on the character. That's fine. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. If we're going to Blade here in this instance, Blade wants the exact same thing. Instead of attack, he wants HP. Cool, fine. The downside is, HSR has you farm for your main set. In this instance, it's Longevous Disciple in Blade's case, and then a Simulated Universe set, which is your Planar Sphere, and then the Rope. Both of these take entirely different sections of time to farm. If you are intending on farming for your main Relic set, you have to go farm that domain. Now, on a surface level, this is perfectly fine. You can sit here, repeat, challenge again, challenge again, challenge again. But for Simulated Universe, you have to individually do a run, and Simulated Universe is not fun once you're doing it for the relics. SU is fun when you can't clear it. SU is fun when it's challenging and allows you to import or at least try out new teams. But the downside of SU is you aren't really ever seeing the potential of your characters. It's not your units based on how good you build them, it's your units based on the buffs you get, which is RNG. But I could be in the minority for that one. However, here's a secondary issue with relics. Aside from the sets, you're looking for 3 good stats. This is either HP for your main individual unit. If it's a healer, it's HP. If it is a supporter, it's usually HP or defense. For instance, if we're going to another support character people use a lot, Pella. Pella wants defense and a mix of HP to survive because her attack and crit doesn't matter. Now you can slide in defensive sets, but still, the main stats you're looking for on most units will be either attack or HP, speed, and then ER or an elemental rope or sphere. So the problem comes in. Speed is already extremely difficult to get. If you're looking for crit on a specific DPS for your main body piece, good luck with that because it's also another hard stat to get. And so this leaves you in a situation. If you're building someone as a DPS, you want the hardest stat to get as a body piece, and then the other hardest stat to get as a boots set. And then an entirely separate section you have to farm for will be based around your sphere. And so this means that you're farming in different areas for one character, and the act of farming itself is not interesting because it's autoplay. Yes, I understand you can manual, but bluntly speaking, you only manual when you legitimately have to or when the gameplay is interesting. Repeating the exact same domain over and over again with no subsequent changes because bluntly, most teams are based around one hyper carry, maybe a sub DPS, and then your supports and your sustain. In some cases, you may have 2 supports. In another case, there may be 2 full DPS comps, such as Liu and Blade, or Jing Liu and maybe somebody like Clara. But regardless of that circumstance, you can still auto comfortably. And so 9 out of 10 individuals will choose to auto, especially when farming for relics, because you aren't really too concerned. Once you get a relic, then you have to find Relic XP, which is an entirely different thing. It's already difficult to come across because you are already spending up gear and equipment and level XP to build up these relics in the first place to find out, do they get speed? Do they get maybe crit rate, attack percentage, or something else that you actually want? No? Okay, on to the next. Unlike in Genshin, there is no opportunity for double experience when building up relics, meaning that it's much more resource intensive to build up these, excluding the fact that you're spending 40 for the potential first set and then 40 stamina for the potential second set, which you could only farm a limited number of times before you have to redo that Simulated Universe run. But of course, traces. Traces are a secondary issue. Can anybody, in any capacity, explain to me, because, once again, I played Genshin, the other HoYoverse game, why, when I'm building up these, do I have to instead essentially spend resources to get the stats that these units should have ascended with? 10% crit damage here, 8% here, 5 here. Why am I, arbitrarily speaking, missing out on crits because I didn't level a unit up to 90 or to 80? Because, once again, these are locked off by certain level requirements. So I'm required to get them to max level to essentially build them out fully. And then there's the restrictiveness of light cones. If your character cannot properly utilize a light cone, it is extremely individual based. 160 speed to maximize Seely's light cone. Silver Wolf, 3 or more debuffs required to get this. And this essentially means that your light cones, basically, to a degree at least, especially for DPSs, lock you out of the flexibility that they should have, or at least would have were they weapons in Genshin Impact. And it sucks, because there are certain times where you're like, this light cone is universally good, or this one is great, because it may give you crit, it may give you damage percentage, which sounds nice on paper, but then you have to consider, can anyone else maximize this? Is there any other character who's going to drain your team's HP? Not just their own, but your team's HP? No? Okay, then Jingliu's great light cone is only for Jingliu. What about Blade, where you need to take damage? Arlen takes damage. Does anyone else? No? Okay then. And it goes down the list from there. And so, whilst there are many qualities on the surface that I like about HSR, the more I play and the more experience I have, the less I enjoy, because 9 times out of 10, it's me autoing the combat. Simulated Universe is not Endgame, because I'm not testing out the strength of my characters there, and Golden Gears and Swarm Disaster is the exact same thing. It's RNG on top of RNG. But if I'm going into an MOC, that's a damage test. Cool, I get that. But then you have Pure Fiction, which says, hey, I know you've been building out for damage with your Seelies, with your Jin Yuans, but right now, we really want you to build out an entirely different team composition, not just for damage, but to get the maximum number of points within Pure Fiction, which I understand requires an entirely different set of teams. But then, what was the point in building out 1 DPS or 2 DPSs for 2 separate team comps when this one requires something else entirely different? Also, I'm not gonna lie, the story of Firefly was pretty bad. It was awful. It was not a good story. I don't understand the hype around it. We didn't get to know Firefly. She just, like, spoilers, she just popped in, we knew her for the duration of this episode, she died at the end, and we're supposed to care? No, it's the same thing that happened with Ting Yun. You barely knew Ting Yun before she got offed. So why are we suddenly acting like she was a legitimately great character? I don't understand. But hey, that's just my opinion. Tell me yours. This is a mini rant. If you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time with Blue Archive.